and I'm and I trust and I'm and I deliver this message. I'm asking the question and answering the question. Are we betraying our American indigenous ancestors by calling ourselves black people? Are we betraying them? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, and the hell we are. Reason being is because our grandparents, great-grandparents, like I said, 40, 50, 60 years back, they didn't want to be referred to as black people. Black was something that was forced on them, just like Negro, by the U.S. government to basically create a permanent underclass of people. In other words, the black people, aka the indigenous people, would be a permanent underclass of people who would be seen as, like I said, a permanent underclass. Prior to, them calling us black people, they call us copper colored people or just colored people. And our people embrace that, the reality of who they are. And to see people today, because again, the black thing didn't come about until the 60s. The black, they was calling us Negroes in the 50s, but it was colored. It was, there was a time for colored, and then next thing it was Negro. And they were trying to, the Caucasian racists or the so-called white supremacists were trying to label us as black people to erase our American indigenous heritage. So when I see people talking about that today, I just happen to hear come across Tariq Nasheed. He was doing something concerning the term black, right? He was doing something concerning the term black and black people. And in doing that, he basically was trying to stick up for the term black people and trying to act as though this is some sort of power behind that. And, he failed to, somebody questioning the term black, which I think a lot of these, topics on his podcast is set up. But that's neither here nor there. But they were discussing on Tariq Nasheed's show, his podcast, about the term black and why, is it wrong for us to use the term black, something along those lines. And he basically stood up for black. Tariq Nasheed stood up for black, using the term black. But I'm like, what is black? And in accepting black, you erase our American indigenous heritage. You see, anybody can connect to black because according to them, black, according to him and other so-called people, which is off as hell to me, black is a skin color. So according to what they say, which is not, but you got so many people who could just connect on to black because, the foundational black American thing or the term black, you got Africans and everybody else. Anybody with dark skin that can connect on to black. Nobody can connect on to American indigenous. Nobody can do that. Not Africans, not Native Americans, not Mongolians or any of these other people, Asians who call themselves. The only people that could connect to American indigenous is so-called black people, so-called American bronze-skinned people. Prior to us being called black people, we called ourselves copper-colored, and we knew that we were the American Indians. Our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, grandfathers knew we were American Indians. If you ask them, they'll tell you we connected to indigenous tribes that have nothing to do with the Native Americans. We have hundreds of indigenous tribes throughout the Americas that are connected to the copper-colored races who were found here by the Europeans. I wonder why the so-called FBAs or people like Tariq Nasheed never talk about that, the 1828 Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of American, the copper-colored races who were found here by the Europeans, but now they take on the term American. I'm just paraphrasing. But basically in that description, the 1828 Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of American, it was describing our people as the real Americans. So, us as the copper-colored people, which later they cut it down to colored people, and us as the, who we are as American, because like I said before, we're the only real Americans here, the only real American indigenous people here. So, yes, we are betraying our people when we call ourselves black because we are siding with the so-called white supremacists, the white Caucasian, the racists who set up here and called us black people to hide and erase our heritage and culture. And so when you get people like your Tariq Nasheeds with the FBA and trying to, basically use FBA to cover our American indigenous heritage, because at this point, you can't say it's not. You can't say that FBA is not being used by not just your Tariq Nasheeds, but I think people behind him, you know, that it's not being used to cover our American indigenous heritage. I mean, Tariq Nasheed, you rarely ever hear him or these pro-blacks like your Jason Blacks and talk about all the American indigenous tribes here. I told you they like to downplay it. Like, you know, that's a whole history that's hidden. He don't talk about the mound cities our people built. You think that's by accident? You think it's by accident to Tariq Nasheed and your Jason Blacks and all those people don't talk about our American indigenous heritage and how we had our own villages and our own places all over America before the Europeans came here. It's right in the 1828 Merriam-Webster dictionary. My question is, why don't Tariq Nasheed talk about that? That's a huge history that's being wiped away by using the term black. So if he's a part of that, then obviously he's working against our people, man. Honestly, if you're sitting here and telling us that we should embrace black over American indigenous or foundational black American over American indigenous, then you know, I'm like, I got to look at you side eye because we got a very rich American indigenous heritage here going back to the Olmecs, the Aztec, the Inca, the Mayan. And he just seems to downplay that with this whole black thing. And that, you know, black was a creation of your racist Caucasians, your white supremacists who he claims he's against. That we didn't call ourselves black people. And when they called us black people, it was not meant to, you know, empower us. It was meant to work against us and erase our heritage and culture. That's why in the 20s and the 30s, 40s, you call bronze-skinned people, copper-colored people, if you called our people black, that was fighting words. Those were fighting words. So when you calling yourself black, you're going against the ancestors. I'm not even talking about 6, 7 generations. I'm talking about your great-grandparents, your grandparents. They didn't want to be called black. You know, I'm pretty sure Tariq Nasheed could tell you his grandmother and them didn't want to be answering to no Negro and no black and all this other stuff. They acknowledged who they was as indigenous people, and they call themselves bronze, copper, you know, and they try to make it seem like it's something wrong because we don't want to accept black, which comes from these racist Caucasians, these so-called white supremacists who want to put us in a box and erase our culture and heritage. And you get people like your Tariq Nasheeds and all these other pro-blacks who want to get an attitude about why we don't want to accept the term black. You know, we indigenous Americans, we don't need to be nobody's black people, nobody's African Americans, because all that's inaccurate and all of it is false. So yes, and hell yeah, we are betraying our ancestors. Yes, we are. Yes, we are betraying our ancestors when we sit up here and call ourselves black people. Yes, we are, because they didn't want to be called that, because that's not who they are. It was sad to even watch somebody do a documentary on the Nation of Islam, and they was talking about how our people before the Allen Elijah Muhammad Nation of Islam, how we didn't want to be known as black people, how we were called copper-colored, sepia tone and all that. Yeah, because that's really how we look. That people are demonizing us and saying we don't want to be something that we're not. They're trying to basically use reverse psychology to get us to accept blackness. And our skin is not black. Our skin is not black, and our culture is not black. We have a very rich culture here in America as the only real American indigenous people. As the Olmecs, the Aztec, the Inca, the Mayan, we have a clear bloodline and connection to the Americas, not Africa. Not Africa. Not Africa, and not blackness. Again, so our people got to get out of that mindset. We got to get out of that mentality of embracing blackness because, you know, it's a popular terminology. That's the only reason, again, you know, we're going to go with something that's popular, like how they made FBA a popular thing, when that's just wash, rinse, and just wash, rinse, and repeat. That's just remixing African American and black, which are two terminologies that certain people don't want to let go of. And again, I can't tell people what to think. I'm not going to even attempt to tell people what to think, but I am going to tell the truth. You got a lot of people who are working against our true heritage and our true culture as American indigenous people, as the real Americans. We the only one that could claim that. The hell with anybody else talking about is false, because if you put who we are up against, you know, who we are as those copper-colored races, which is in the Merriam-Webster dictionary of American, who the original Americans are. And we got to stop letting people displace us, calling us freedmen, because again, freedmen is connected to slavery. If you're saying you're freed, then that means you were once slave or connected to slave. That go back to that ADOS thing. We were here long before slavery long before the Europeans